Today on the show, we're talking about telling stories with your videos, a bit of video storytelling, how you can craft narratives, how you can think about the characters, and really think about the investment that your viewers may have in your content. But we are going out live to all the various places. So if you are watching live, let us know in the chat, hashtag Team Live. And if you're watching this later on, you can do hashtag Team Replay. So, Sam, I have some insight into the answer to this question, but tell me about your week last week. I know it was quite a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah, it was. It's been a crazy time. We had to leave our house because there was construction being done inside the house. So we spent the week, going into two different hotels. And at the time of the show, I was in a hotel that apparently had internet from 1992 and had not upgraded it. It was terrible. Aside from the fact that I would not have been in a private room to do the show, there would have been kids jumping around and doing all that stuff. We did finally get back into our house Sunday and immediately had guests from out of town joining us. And they just left today. And it's just been a whirlwind. We did like the whole tour guide of Los Angeles thing for the few days that they were with us. And it's been a lot. And top that all off with, we have new foster kittens en route to the house right now. So by the end of this show, I expect them to be in the house. How's things with you, John?
Uh things with me are going okay. It's because it's actually Easter this weekend. Australia actually has some public holidays, so I've got a few extra days off work, which is so welcomed. Sometimes you don't know how tired you are until you can actually take a proper break. But anyway, let's check in the chat. Big hello to Saeed from Germany, who's Team Live and also Team Cats. And Raindrops and Ripples is saying, yay,
Yeah.
kittens. So we're going to be talking a little bit about kittens today, and characters more generally. But today on the show, we are going to be talking about crafting stories and telling stories with video. And I think for a lot of us, especially if we're making tutorial videos, if we're just getting information out there, like it may be less obvious to us the ways that we might approach this, given that, we're not making Jurassic Park, we're not making Titanic. We don't really have these stories that have a beginning, middle, end necessarily. But I just thought it might be worthwhile to discuss some of the ways that we can sort of think about this maybe in a different way. And I guess the first of those really involves creating some intrigue and getting people interested enough to potentially click on your video in the first place. So
Yeah.
I personally have a lot of feelings about this, and it was really funny during the week. Because of the way we schedule this, sometimes, and it goes out to various channels, sometimes I will do a thumbnail and Sam will do a thumbnail, and I was like, I am so sick of this clickbait crap, and then he'll literally put Mr. Beast's name on the video thumbnail for this episode. So, Sam, talk to me about how you think about Intrigue and how you think it might be worthwhile sort of exploring that.
Yeah. So there are, I think, 3 steps to getting eyeballs to watch your video once they've gotten to that YouTube page. So, first they get the thumbnail, and there should be something in that causes like an emotional reaction, a question to be formed, something that's going to take them from, okay, this is interesting, what am I looking at? And then they read the title, which gives a little more context and clarity on this is what we're going to be talking about. And then the first sentence or two, like that first 2 to 3 seconds of the video, the hook should solidify, like, I have gotten you here and I promise you I am delivering on this thing. So in the instance that John is talking about, there was a picture of, on this live stream of me saying Mr. Beast style editing is dead, something of that nature. The title then clarifies, I don't remember what exactly it is offhand, but something to the effect of authentic video storytelling, so we're going to go into that kind of thing. And then this is us talking about, if this was an actual video and not a live stream, I would straight out, have that hook be something like, people are burned out from flashy edits that happen every 3 to 6 seconds and want a more authentic, slow-paced video. and this is how we're going to get there. And that's the hook. Now I can cut that and put it at the top of the podcast. But yeah,
and
so
we
that's what it
might
is.
actually talk about that specifically in the editing segment later on.
Yeah.
But I guess, you know, and hello to CG who's joining us in the chat. Great to have your company. Saeed is saying, is X the new Y killer? And in brackets, it never is. And I guess, you know, we see all these comparisons and they very quickly become cliches, you know, being the Netflix of blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that I see, like, I think in some ways, if you create enough intrigue, and we'll talk about the packaging later on in even more detail, but if you create enough intrigue, people will tend to want to click through and check it out. But if you don't come good on that promise,
Right.
people probably aren't going to trust you ever again. So it feels like a balancing act. And again, I'm not particularly interested in sort of that kind of clickbaity approach, as I kind of alluded to earlier.
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, I think clickbait gets thrown around a lot, and I used to call just about everything clickbait as well, you know, like flashy image using Mr. Beast and any of that stuff. Yes, you know, it does have that equation, but if you do deliver on what you're promising, then that's not clickbait anymore, right? Like clickbait is, I've gotten you here just for the view, and I don't care what happens to you now, right? It's the equivalent of, I'm selling you a piece of crap for $10 on Amazon. You've bought it. I don't care if you like it, you know? But what we want is return viewers. So we want you to come here, see that we do know what we're talking about, see that we have insights that you haven't heard before, and maybe you'll come back next time.
Sure. And I guess, and again, I don't know that I'm necessarily typical of any larger viewing population, but as much as I enjoy scrolling through TikTok, for example, there's a degree of hype and marketing and hyperbole that is just so exhausting to me. And I guess it's a little bit of that 3 to 6 second cut editing style that you refer to. And like 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, you know, they will show me a chicken recipe, for example, and I'm sure it's a great chicken recipe, but they don't say this is a great chicken recipe. They say this chicken recipe will change your life, and this is marry me chicken, and you know, this will completely change your life. And it's such a stupid inflated promise that's never going to be received, and I'm just tired of it. I'm grumpy. I'm an old man. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so there's a question in the chat. I don't know. Can you still hear me, Sam? I'm guessing not, by the look on his face. So I don't know if Sam is still with us or if... Yep, okay. So it seems to be some technical issues, but we'll just keep going, or I'll keep going, and hopefully you can hear me all right. Okay, so I guess the other things that Sam sort of alluded to are like, what are those questions you can ask? What are those hooks you can ask the question of, and sort of keep going from there. And thank you everybody in the chat for clarifying that it is apparently just Sam at the moment. He's just jumped out, and I'm going to adjust this screen a little bit. Hello, Walter. So Sam will be back in a moment, just having some technical issues, but that's fine. Today on the show, we're talking all about crafting video narratives and telling stories. So, you know, we spoke about creating that intrigue, and again, you know, working with those open questions, those open hooks, really setting up some expectations and saying, you know, this is a problem I'm having, or this is a solution to a problem you might be having potentially. And I guess it's really important to think about that trade-off between, you know, creating the intrigue, maybe being a little bit sensationalist, but also not burning bridges and sort of not damaging the trust that anybody may have actually placed in you. So certainly keep that in mind. I am really curious if people who are watching in the chat, if you do know of any great examples of places where people have caught your curiosity and really intrigued you, and whether or not, you know, they came good on that promise or whether it was a bit misleading. So let me know in the chat what you're thinking. That would be really, really awesome. But this is the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey. Normally I'm joined by Sam Proof. He will hopefully be back in just a moment, just having some technical issues. But today we are talking about crafting those video narratives. And we're going to be talking about crafting those through editing, a bit of character development, and also ultimately how you package up your video as well. So it's all coming up on today's show. And, you know, in some ways, and especially with the rise of the short form content, you only have a few seconds to really grab somebody's attention when they are sort of scrolling through a feed which is serving up content auto-magically, for want of a better word. So again, it's really important to get straight to the point for that shorter content. And I guess in some ways, like, I'm a practical, pragmatic person. I just want to show you how to do cool stuff, and I want to learn how to do cool stuff. So in some ways, I really want to cut out the fluff. I want to get into the action really quickly. But I think sometimes it is worthwhile sort of setting the stage and thinking about the tension that might exist, or the problem that is being solved, or maybe the problem that you know, is potentially out there, or the improvement, the before and after. What is that transformation that you could perhaps potentially share? And Walter is saying in the chat that Jeff Barch with Story Greenlight is a good example of someone who uses storytelling. Okay, I'm not actually familiar with Jeff, but I'll try and check him out after the show. But yes, it's great to hear those examples. Again, it sounds like Sam is experiencing quite a bit of technical issues. So what we're going to do, we're going to come back and talk about actually working with different characters in just a moment. So this is the video and live streaming show. Thank you so much for your company. Let's click on this one here.
And then I looked at the first assessment, and the first assessment was record a 5-minute video, and it was a pretty simple introduction of yourself. There was nothing exciting. I didn't have to research. It was just a 5-minute warm up, and I freaked out. That course is still sitting in the cupboard beside me. I see that stack of papers and I almost rock in the corner. It cost me a lot of money to sign up, and I threw the whole course away.
And that's a segment from my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, which you can learn more about over at johnlacey.com. That was Michelle J. Raymond talking about overcoming her fear of being on camera, I should say. Bit of a Freudian slip. So we are talking about video storytelling. And again, let's talk about characters. And I think that was a great example. Michelle was describing her own experience. She's the one experiencing the pain of wanting to be on camera, but really not feeling comfortable enough to do it. She sort of explained in the full episode how some of the things that she did to overcome that fear. And I think it's a great example because the transformation is particularly pronounced there, because she went from literally not being able to record a short intro video for a school project to speaking on stages around the world, including Social Media Marketing World, which just happened. So that was a really cool example. Again, I'm just... and this is the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey. Sam Proof will hopefully be back with us in just a moment. He's just experiencing some technical issues. I just want to check in with the chat. Saeed is saying that stand-up comedy is great in storytelling. And I think that's certainly true. I think there are certain experiences that are relatively universal. I don't know that anything is completely universal, but there are certainly experiences we can relate to as different people. And again, maybe there's an opportunity to find some humor there, but let's talk about the characters and like, who is the character of your video project? And maybe it's you, maybe it's literally you as yourself. Maybe you are being another person or taking on a different role. Again, in that sketch comedy routine, there are a lot of people playing different characters online, especially on TikTok. Think about who is the content actually for, and maybe putting them in place. And you can ask them questions in a way that's like, have you experienced this? What happened the last time you tried to do this and didn't pull it off? Okay, I think Sam is back. Let's try and bring him in. Welcome back.
Thanks. Good times. Nothing like live.
It is the joy of live, and you've got to roll with it. Live definitely happens, and we do experience glitches, but it's great to have you back. And thank you again to so many people in the chat that sort of clarified what that issue was, so we could get through it pretty quickly. Okay, Sam, so we're talking about characters and, you know, who are the characters in our video projects? And, you know, it could literally be you. It could be the person you're speaking to. It could be somebody who's being used as an example or a bit of a case study. And I just played the Build a Presentation Muscle clip featuring Michelle J. Raymond and sort of exploring her resistance to being on camera and the amazing sort of arc she's had since then. So I think that's a really inspirational story. But I know there are certainly some kitten lovers in the audience, so I think we have to acknowledge the fact that when it comes to Cute Avalanche, there are kittens, but they're not just any old kittens. They have names, they have personalities, they're part of different litters that also have names. Talk to us about how you sort of, I guess, capture and display the personality of those kittens and how that helps in the broader sort of foster work of Cute Avalanche.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes beyond just like a simple live stream or video thing, because it's more of an all-encompassing, thing where we utilize different social medias to sort of tell that story, where we have whatever happened before they show up. They get dropped off at the shelter, or they've been found on the streets. And sometimes we don't get a lot of that, and sometimes we do. So we can actually tell that story. Like, we teamed up with a feeder who had found this mama cat down in South Central Los Angeles, and this cat had clearly sustained damage that looked like someone had potentially harmed it intentionally, kicked it, or something of that nature. So we had this sort of compelling story to go with. And often we have, I don't know, these cats were dropped off at the shelter, now they're here. But you find other ways to sort of fill in the gaps of like what becomes that origin story. So we do things like poll our community for thoughts on names and things like that. So it's all just different elements of creating that storytelling world, and like, establishing them. So we have things that we can do on the live stream or in video, or just through our community like Discord or social media through like Instagram and things like that.
And I guess in that way, the audience has a lot of investment in the fact that maybe they've helped name this kitten. Maybe they've seen it sort of from the moment it arrived with you and can follow its path. And I don't mean to cause sort of cat/dog tensions within the chats, but I must admit one of my guilty pleasures is watching these videos where this pet groomer sort of goes to the shelters and gives these dogs makeovers, and they instantaneously, get adopted. And I'm sure dogs can't smile, but I swear there's one named Charlie, and I swear the minute this poor little pup has his hair cut, he's just a happier little chap, and it's adorable. And I guess, like, especially if you have case studies and charitable work, if you can sort of share the personal stories, people will resonate with that potentially and feel a lot of buy-in. And maybe it's about having similar experiences, but maybe it's just the contrast between your experience and somebody else's. I think when we talk about storytelling, like, you can go back to, when I moved out to California to be like a screenwriter or a novelist, I read a lot about like the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell and all of that sort of stuff. And you have that big circle of like 12 different phases or whatever that you can attribute to like Star Trek or Star Wars or, Godfather, or any of these big films have these beats. And if you really read into that and analyze it, like, that still works with, like, even with a 3-second video on TikTok, you're establishing, what is the mundane thing, the average person, the ordinary world, the problem of this thing. And then, you follow them through this solution to, like, here you've got this dog in a kennel and it looks terrible, and that's its everyday life. But now here comes this mentor or this special person who is the dog groomer, Obi-Wan groomer or whatever. And they go through, this trial and tribulation of trimming and shampooing and all of these things. And then boom, at the end, you have, this revelation of this brand new dog. And that's all hero's journey stuff. So like, you can read in, as deep as you want to, and apply that to any aspect of storytelling, whether it's video or live streaming or a 3-second TikTok video or even an Instagram post. I think that's awesome stuff. And like, it ties in a lot to what we were saying about like clickbait and hooks and stuff, because, I know John hates this, but you scroll through TikTok and every fourth video is, if you're a live streamer, if you're a dog groomer, if you're a person who likes to put cake in their face,
And there, you've got your audience. You almost immediately know your ordinary world of this like thing. It's, I'm a person that creates content. I'm a person that puts cake in my face. Like, this now speaks to me. Where are we going on this journey? And there you go.
And it's funny, I think in a lot of ways, like if you are a content creator, like whatever that means, whatever mediums you're exploring, it can be really tempting to just want to think, I need more and more people. But I think in a lot of ways, you need the right people. You need the people that resonate with what you do. And I love the idea that, and it's so popular on TikTok that people will say, this is for this audience. If this is not you, keep scrolling. Yeah. And I love that they actually give you that ability to self-select without potentially wasting too much time. Like, I think that's quite a beautiful approach to all of that.
Yeah.
I guess, getting back to the hero's journey a little bit, the one observation I would make, and this might just be snarky, grumpy old man John speaking, but the one thing I do notice is that as much as I genuinely believe in the power of storytelling as a thing to captivate people, and it's a thing that we've been doing from the beginning of time, I do see a lot of quote-unquote storytelling experts that are very prosaic, very long-winded, and I'm like, it's important that you just share with people what they need to know and not necessarily be, too romantic or too prosaic about that, I think. Because there are so many cliches that come out when people feel like they need to tell a story, and it'll be something out of Charles Dickens or, the nursery rhymes of ye olde times.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, we're talking to people who are creating videos, whether that's long form videos or live streams or TikToks, and you're not writing a novel. So you don't need to Tolkien-esque name every blade of grass and give its backstory and, how it bloomed as a seed. You need to provide exactly enough information. Like, that is when we talk about delivering on the promise of the clickbait title, that's what we mean. It's like, give the necessary information. Don't overdo it with like, here, we're gonna make this cake, but first I want to tell you about the Black Dahlia murders, which really inspired me to make this cake. Unnecessary. We don't just make the cake. All right.
And that's such a running joke, because and this is a little bit outside of the video realm, but like one of the things, the unintended consequences of Google SEO and on-page time is that recipes contain 40 pages worth of crap before they even tell you the ingredients these days. It is so unhelpful, and yet they've been incentivized to do that. But I guess the other thing, you mentioned, you alluded to Tolkien, and I just had such a flashback to the time I tried to read The Hobbit, and I got 5 pages in, and I learned about 34 generations of hobbits, and I thought, I just can't. I'm sorry.
I don't blame you. I've read it, and I wouldn't do it again. I mean, I liked it, but I don't have time for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the Video and Livestreaming Show. Today we're talking all about video narratives and storytelling. So I guess, if we come in, and again, I'm sort of thinking in terms of a tutorial video, which is very much my bread and butter. And, sometimes I just want to get straight into the action, but I think other times it's an opportunity to say, to set up the problem, to maybe encourage the audience to be in my shoes. And maybe my boss has told me I need a video produced in the next 30 minutes.
Right.
And what am I going to do to make that happen? And how can I show that? And maybe even explore the negative consequences of maybe not pulling that off. Maybe thinking about the motivations, maybe thinking about some of the tension that's going on around me. And I'm sort of curious, obviously in this cute avalanche cat world, people that love cats just love it. You don't necessarily need to sell it too hard, but I guess for people who you are encouraging to actually be, the forever home of some of these kittens, is there a different kind of buy-in, do you think, that they need?
I mean, it's interesting because I don't think we go about making content looking for that person. Like, that's a different person, right? Like it has happened. We've had, I think, 2 people who have found the channel that ended up becoming adopters of the cats. But yeah, I think we did kind of start with the thought of that'd be great. We'll have this and people can find the cats, but really it's a global audience. So chances are they're not in Los Angeles. So we early on shifted gears to like, we are just sharing our foster journey and just educating people who like cats to be better people who like cats, you know? And I think that's the content that we make. So if we were to specifically make content for future adopters, I think it would be similar, but there would be a shift in like almost a higher level of storytelling. And really, if I'm going to be honest, it would probably be sympathetic storytelling. We're really pushing on like there was a dark day at the shelter, like, but I'm not interested in making that. Maybe I should. I don't know. So yeah, I think there would be a slight difference in how we approach it.
And I guess, that's the thing, and I think it's worth articulating for everybody, is that we may have a very concrete idea of who our audience is, but there's bound to be a number of different people with different interests and different motivations in that group. And I think, like, in terms of the cat stuff, like, there are people that just love cats and watch them and find them adorable. Yeah. And I know there are people in your audience that are literally allergic to cats but love cats. So, yes. The ability for them to watch them without, encountering the hay fever and the sneezing and the allergies and stuff is huge. Whereas potentially, and I get the feeling that you probably do this a little bit in just kidding around as well, the actual pet ownership and the behavior stuff, the medical stuff, the things that, the casual cat lover who doesn't own a cat may not need to know, but somebody who does sort of wants to dig a little bit deeper. So I think those are all great things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes to the whole, like, finding the sort of message of the medium where you have all these different things, whether it's a live stream or TikToks or long form video or a podcast, and then knowing, what audience is watching these different things and then isolating specific content for it. And, not just doing that whole, I do one content here, chop it up and I throw it to everything else. I think we've made a really good model for not doing that specific thing with Cute Avalanche.
And I think even to some extent with this show, like, I'm always looking for new opportunities for people to walk into our world.
Yeah.
And I'm very conscious of the fact that there are a lot of people in my world that they get scared by the mention of OBS Studio. And, I try, and in other ways, that is something that brings a lot of people to my YouTube channel. So I don't know. It's always tricky because I think it is possible to niche too deeply, but in other ways, if you're too general, that can be a problem as well. I guess there's sweet spots to be found there.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's just a matter of putting it out there and being obsessive about your analytics, and like going, okay, did I make this for me or did I make this for the intended audience, or did I find an audience that came to me and I'm suddenly like, oh, 1/3 of our viewers don't actually have cats and have X, Y, and Z reasons for not getting cats. So maybe we need to shift. And that's exactly what it is.
Absolutely. Okay, let's check in with the chat. Walter has written, in creating content, I try to incorporate storytelling and tutorials together. Storytelling helps to reveal new information to the viewer. And Saeed has written, storytelling could also mean having a structure, such as the 3 acts, beginning, middle, end, to keep it very basic. And I kind of feel like, talking about characters, the two of us, we're very similar. We have very similar interests, but I think we have very different personalities. And Sam is so chill and relaxed, and I am so tense, and I need structure in all of the things and planning. And some weeks that, I think we balance each other out nicely. In other weeks, I think we just drive each other a little bit nuts. But I think structure is a beautiful thing. And I know there are lots of people that just go live and just, talk about the weather or, just whatever they want. But I need something a little bit more focused than that. So I guess it's worth keeping in mind that different people might be looking for different things.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we talk specifically about live, there is an abundance of people that just go live to talk or hang out or play the game, and they lack that sort of storytelling structure to their live stream. And I think live streams absolutely are a platform that can, learn from the hero's journey and storytelling and all of that. And they, these people that just go live and they're like, well, I played all these retro games that no one else is playing, or I played all the Fortnite that everyone else is playing, but how come I still have one viewer? Yeah, you need more. Like, that's why. Like, you can't do the same thing everyone else is doing for no particular reason. It has to be like, here is, what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And the beauty of game streaming is that half the story is basically there for you. You've got a mission that you're going to try and achieve. And you are actively two heroes, like in-game and the player, so you have like almost two paths happening at the same time. Like, can he do this thing or she do this thing? So it's like, just if you play into that concept, you're going on the hero's journey. You're going to learn new skills. You're going to meet the mentor potentially. And, you'll have whatever, the death, the rebirth, the revelation, the reward, and then your return change. That's the, simplistic version of that diagram. So really, if you just lean into it a little bit, and I think anyone who's doing video or live streaming, and I know this was kind of mentioned before, would deal great by like taking an acting and an improv class, or 3. I think that'll really help you play into it. But studying, the hero's journey and storytelling in general, like, it makes all of that just better.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to come back and talk about how we can use video editing to tell that story. This is the Video and Live Streaming Show.
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them. So when Johan would get on my counter before, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. He loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I talk to him and be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And quite a few characters in that tale as well. So that's a segment from Just Kidding Around, which is Sam's podcast, which you can learn more about over at cuteavalanche.com. This is the Video and Live Streaming Show. Today we're talking all about telling stories through video and video editing specifically. And let's get into the video editing side of this, Sam. And I guess in some ways we will be talking generally. We're not going to be, at least I don't think we're going to be demonstrating things in software. And
no.
Obviously it's important to get to know your video editing software well so you know how to do these things. But I guess, in terms of telling a story, like, what do you recommend in terms of sort of grabbing someone's attention and potentially just dropping them straight into the action, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a good amount of this, we're talking about people who are trying to make tutorials or educational stuff, things along those lines. One of the biggest things with any video is, as I've said 3 times already, delivering on the promise of whatever your thumbnail and title are. So if you're making that cake or you're doing a tutorial about some cool live streaming thing, immediately show that, right? Like, you want to prove that you're going to take them on this path that gets to this result. So starting by showing the result first, which has been very taboo for a long time, like TV, that was like whoa, does he get there or does he not? No, the internet does not have time for this nonsense. You need to prove immediately that you're going to make this 4-tiered wedding cake, or, you know how to do this cool OBS mask, right? Like any of those, live stream gurus out there that really are doing anything, that they always start by showing you, like, here, look at all the crazy effect I've done, right? So show you the work immediately, and then get right into it. Like, no recipe card stories about why you're doing this. Just get right into it, and go through the steps and try and cut out anything that's unnecessary. But at the same time, as I've said in my version of this live stream, you don't need to Mr. Beast it. Like, the 3 to 6 second cuts, people are burned out. They've seen enough Mr. Beast. They have Mr. Beast. They don't need another Mr. Beast. They've been doom scrolling on 3 different platforms now, where it used to just be the one. So they're more open now to authentic content that doesn't cut for no apparent reason every 3 to 6 seconds. And I think that's a lot of the issue with that cut style of, what they call audience retention cutting, editing. The problem is really not that it's a bad style, but that so many people just got it in their head they needed to change the cut every 3 to 6 seconds, that they were doing it mathematically and without rhyme or reason. If there's a music bed below it or specific reasons that you are making those cuts, then maybe that is your style. But if you don't have time for that, like if you're a solo entrepreneur creator and you're doing all of the work, don't kill yourself by trying to put 5 days into one edit. Like, you can shoot all the stuff, edit it in 2 hours, and that's fine.
And I'm kind of grateful that you brought us back to this, because I kind of forgot that we wanted to pick up this thread. But I kind of have this theory that there are two different types of people in the world, and some of them really struggle to focus. And, I'm not going to apply any medical terminology to any of this, but they need constant distraction all of the time. And there are other people that can't stand that. And I'm an old person. I'm in that second camp. If you do 30 cuts in 30 seconds, I'm probably getting motion sickness.
Yeah.
I'm just overstimulated. I don't need that. Like, please focus. Please get to the point. Please don't do too many shaky camera moves that don't add anything.
Yeah.
So again, I feel like those are potentially very different audiences. And I guess you need to get a sense of who your audience is and what they like and what they prefer and how you're going to deal with that. But I guess the other thing I'm hearing is that it's really important to not feel like you have to tell a story chronologically. So if there are certain parts that are more important than other parts, if you want to show the tension up front to get some buy-in from the audience first, by all means do that. And it could be something that you just copy a section of the clip and move it to the beginning of the timeline. And I think that's the other thing I really want to emphasize is how you actually show the passing of time, because there are people that record every aspect of their life, and if you watch that in real time, as Sam knows because he's been a video logger on reality TV shows, like not all of it is interesting.
Yep.
And it's really important that you spare your audience the boring stuff and the stuff that's not going to serve the story. So I guess in terms of actual edits though, I'm a big fan of ripple delete. So you can select a section of your project and a start point and end point and just cut it out, but also just merge the things before it and after it together in one sort of clip, one step essentially. And that's something I do in Camtasia quite a lot. I'm curious, like what kind of things, and I know that you use CapCut a lot, like what kind of things are you actually doing to the timeline to adjust how you tell that story?
Oh, geez. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure there's hundreds of them, but
it really depends, because like I've done so many different kinds of videos. So like there are often, like the sketch comedy videos or the vlog videos, which I think I approach very differently from more technical tutorial style video, where early on I am picking the music that goes to it so that I can make those cuts that go to that music. Because I've got the emotion that I want from it. Whereas with like a tutorial thing, music is complete afterthought, and I don't make any cuts relevant to it whatsoever, pretty much. And like I will, cut that tutorial video to its bare bones and like just whatever I think is the most necessary amounts of it with the least amount of work. And then just drop whatever's roughly the right size and trim off the ins and outs as far as music goes. So yeah, I think it's very different per project. But and also, man, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place on this, but like, yeah, I've done so many different things that there are times where I'll have like a project that has a lot of repetition, like, I have a very specific format. And so I can almost just make macros that create certain flows that I want. When I was doing like the weird news, we would have specific ins and outs and transitions between it was always like 3 stories and all that kind of stuff. So I just had like a macro that would do all these things for me, because I wanted it always to be the same, which is another thing that you really should look at. We've mentioned this kind of thing time and time again. Like, you have your master sheet and your style guide, and that doesn't not include editing. Like any kind of specific things that you're reusing, like if you are constantly going like, what's a good transition here? No, just sit down and find 3 transitions and be like, these are the ones I use, and these are when I use them. I use, crazy wavy thing when I'm going for my intro and my outro, and then all of my other transitions are fades or cuts, right? Like have that written down so you don't have to think about that ever again. It's the same, like find your 5 pieces of music that you use for those projects, and like you never have to search for music again. They're just there, right? Like you always know what font you're using, what color you're using, all that kind of stuff. Editing is the same.
Absolutely. And I think, especially for newbies, if you give them 40 transitions, they'll want to use every single one of those in every single project.
You don't need the TV transition.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing too, I do like the idea of sort of fading to black as being a way of sort of indicating a transition or even a passing of time, speeding stuff up or slowing it down, taking things out of their original order, and maybe even repeating some strong points. Because I think it's, if you are in a really dramatic place, I think that's a really great place to start, and then sort of go back and tell the story of how things got here, and then what's potentially going to happen next.
Yeah.
I just want to check in with the comments. Hello to Ender Trading, who's joining us from Ireland this week. It's such a globetrotter. Every week, I swear, is somewhere different. Okay, and Saeed is asking a question. I love this question. Do you create storyboards before starting to record? Do you want to go first, Sam?
Sometimes. I mean, yeah, it depends on the project. Like I know a lot of, my tutorial things are just going to be this. It's just me against the backdrop and, or me masked over the screen recording. But when I do like a sketch comedy video or something along those lines, then yeah, I absolutely create some amount of storyboarding. I don't go crazy with it. I'm not making like a full-on comic book and then referencing every single shot, but I do have a lot that are preconceived of that way. Yeah,
absolutely. And I guess, like, again, I feel like I refer to 2 different types of people in all kinds of scenarios, but I think this is another great example. Some people will just hit the camera button and just do whatever they feel they need to do, and other people will plan a lot. And again, you kind of know I'm a planner, and I like to sort of sketch these things out, or, I'll have some sort of script. And again, we kind of mentioned this on a show a little while ago, and it's been so long since I've worked without notes and a script that I forgot this was a thing that I used to do. But before I had my teleprompter, I would get so frustrated, tripping over my words, making mistakes, having to do 15 takes. And you could literally see me getting angry towards the end of some of my videos. It was so frustrating. And I see lots of podcasters that are like, I just talk for 2 hours and then we cut it down to half an hour later on. And to me, that would be such a frustrating way of working. Yeah. I'd much rather have a bit of structure up front and just know that we're hitting those points. And I guess the other thing too is, if you're shooting on location, if you're shooting with paid talents, any time that you waste in terms of not getting the results you want is money that you're losing in real time. And sometimes there'll be times where equipment will break and maybe you didn't notice on the day, and maybe that's going to cause some other problems later on. So I don't know. I'm obviously, I have this bias towards planning, and that might just be me being a bit neurotic. But again, I would encourage most people to do that. But again, you might be much more chilled. You might just want to do your own thing. Try both methods out and work out what works well for you. Another thing that Saeed is not a fan of is unnecessary yelling. I don't know if this is a phenomenon around the world, but we used to have some ads on TV here in Australia, which were just literally words on the screen and people yelling. And they were so irritating. I don't know why anyone thought they would work. It was so bizarre.
There's literally a trending sound right now that's very much yelling at the viewer, and every time I hear it, I'm just like, no, scroll away. Why would I want to watch that? But along the lines of the storyboards and like scripting and stuff like that, absolutely. If I've ever been, using like having other people involved, like it is as planned out as I can get it. Because you don't want to waste their time or your time, and it does minimize like the risk of something going wrong. But really, when it came to like doing things like vlogs, it's all in the moment. So, there's not a lot of like, oh, right, I knew I was going to the zoo and I was going to have the tiger cage right here with a tiger. That doesn't work out. So, there are definitely those two ways of doing things. And it's just, are you the person that wants to edit for 5 days or for 2 hours?
And I guess if you're doing a documentary or reality show, that's probably unavoidable. But again, if I know the points I want to hit, I just want to make sure I'm hitting them. Yeah. Okay, and Walter has said, don't forget to hit the like button for John and Sam. We do appreciate that. Like and subscribe wherever you happen to be watching this. Yeah. I genuinely haven't seen enough Quentin Tarantino movies to even know what this would look like. But Saeed writes, I'm waiting for the first OBS tutorial edited in a Quentin Tarantino style. I don't know. Like, I think that'd be a bit too much blood and violence for YouTube.
Yeah, it would be a lot of violence and a lot of like weird extrapolated talking about donuts or something like. You ever think about how the glow effect is really just a personification of like a really good pastry? Yeah, something like that.
Oh, great. Okay, so this is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking all about video narratives and crafting a story with video. We're going to come back and talk about actually packaging up your video and the different components, because it's not just your video file. And again, I need to press one of these buttons. I think it's this one.
If you've been watching us for a while, or this is your first time and you're thinking, Sam, John, this is great stuff, but I'm wearing a lot of hats already and I don't need to add this to my list of things that I'm doing, but I really want to live stream, I've got you covered. I've been a freelance technical director and stream operator for 20 years, and I can help you either with one-on-one counseling, setups of shows, or even run your whole show for you. Get in touch with me, samproof@gmail.com, or find out more at samproof.tv.
And you can certainly get in touch with Sam for those live production services. He would be happy to help you out. And I must admit, like, we kind of joked a little bit about this comment about the OBS tutorial in the style of Quentin Tarantino, but I'm sure there are lots of little audiences that love their pop culture references. And if you can work that stuff in and they love it and you enjoy it, by all means. I guess the only thing I would sort of caution you on a little bit is the copyright aspect of that. So don't go putting GIFs and movie footage and audio, even though lots of people do. I think it's a really risky game to play. And again, I do appreciate this comment also from Saeed. It's about the order of the scenes. The movies just start in the middle and jump back and forth. So yeah, I mean, that's, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's a really interesting way of approaching that.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, that's a popular trick with a lot of people. I mean, Guy Ritchie, and anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So Sam, I guess, the video is the video file that, we've recorded, we've edited, and we've rendered out of our editing software is great. But especially these days online, it's sort of only one part of the package of the way most people experience this online. And I guess we can use YouTube as an example, but what are some of those other things that we need to think about?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. You're going to get that online. I think we really have to focus just on like YouTube if we're going to give this advice. But it goes all the way back to the beginning, where you've hopefully already figured out your thumbnail and your title, and you've got that going on. You've got all of that description space to utilize. And then it just becomes the marketing and promotion of that video. And there's still opportunities within that to tell stories, about how this video even came to be, why you made this video, things like that. And I think, the more you expand the story outside the video itself, the more chances people will really catch on to it, as opposed to just being like, hey, Twitter, here's a new video I made. It's more compelling if it's like, oh my God, this took me 5 days of editing. and I did it. I finally got this thing up. Or, you know, that's not even a great example. I think even a better example is like, you know, I made this video because once when I was out there trying to find cakes, I couldn't. And I finally figured out how to make my own 4-tier cake. And I hope you appreciate this. Here's my process. I think people are more interested in checking that kind of thing out. So there's a lot to do once you're done. Like,
yeah, and I guess, that's another classic example. Like, people be like, here's a new video, here's a new podcast, but really you want to intrigue them about the actual content of whatever that is. So, if there's some really interesting point or some controversial take or just a weird observation, like you really want to spell that up front. But getting back to, I guess, the packaging, especially the YouTube packaging of all of this, your video file is one thing. You've got that title, you've got the description, you've got tags and hashtags. Again, it's not particularly clear what the impact the tags and hashtags have, but they're still there. You might as well use them.
Yeah.
You do have that longer description. And I guess the other thing too is think about and again, I'm a big accessibility guy, so think about those captioning resources. Yes. You want people to, and that's another way of sort of describing your video in a textual format that people probably can search and probably does impact the way it is potentially served up to you. So those are all things that you can do. I guess, we think about, let's just take the title and the video thumbnail as two parts of the experience. So I tend to think for the title, like I really want to include what it's actually about in a way that people can search for it. Do you think that's reasonable, or should I be telling more of a story there?
I think it makes a lot of sense to put in the title either what it's about or who it's for or some amount of both. And if there's more you can put in there that's compelling to the story, then that's great. Like I said earlier, I like to have the thumbnail be something in like that kind of catches the viewer off guard, makes them question something, and then the title gives them a little clarity. And clarity is clearly, going to be like, who's this video for? What's this video about? There's nothing more clear than that. Then this is how to make a 4-tiered cake, for free, for cheap, for your wedding if you have $10, right? Something like that. Or how to do a guest interview on OBS, like for live streamers. There you go. Like it's pretty clear, and it hits all the SEO words. Not that we're specifically saying do all the SEO words, but you want the best, the best title that explains what's happening in the video. Because if the thumbnail is eye-catching and then the title is sort of like a guessing game, why would they click through?
And I guess the more abstract that title is, even if they do click through, they might be instantly disappointed. So, but again, I guess the example I see in terms of audio podcasts is that people will give their shows really cute and clever names that no one will ever search for. So if you don't already know it exists, you're not going to find it. So I think I think there's a balancing act there about creating intrigue, and just saying what it's actually about, because I think that'll be helpful for people.
Yeah,
I guess another.
I think podcast titles, or are you talking specifically episode titles or show titles? Because I think podcasts are found differently in some extent. I think there's a lot more of like, well, I'm either recommended this through here and here, or I just look through a category and great, here's another murder podcast I'm in. I don't know why it's called Pancake Lover, but I'm down. Whereas with like YouTube videos, it's all about search. Like primarily you're getting that through some kind of search or relevant, other content that was found through search. So you have to be a little more upfront and on the nose with those titles.
Again, that might be a classic example of how I'm different to other people, but I'm always searching podcast apps for very specific things. Sure. And Every app actually has a different search engine, so it's
Yeah.
it's a whole other discussion. But anyway, that's fine. I guess another thing on YouTube is the ability to add those timestamps, and
Yes.
if people do want to jump around to the parts that are most meaningful to them, I'd much rather they watch a third of my video than just skip it entirely because the first section wasn't particularly interesting to them. And I guess the other thing too, is that because of the nature of YouTube, you get a lot of data. And even as a viewer, I can watch a popular video and I can see the places that people have rewatched a lot of times. And I think that's always fascinating.
Yeah, I think we should do a show where we just look at the back end of YouTube at some point and go over the sort of minute details of like what you can actually see. But yeah, what you were saying about the timestamps. So if anyone doesn't know, YouTube has chapters, and after your live stream is done or your video is uploaded, in the description you can put in a timestamp, which is like 01:020, or like 20, not 020, obviously, and then a short description of like Sam and John talk about editing, right? And then you just do that, like, for big blocks. Don't do it for every 5 seconds. Do big generic sort of broad strokes. And two things will happen. At the bottom of the video player, it'll break up that timeline into chunks, and you can hover over those chunks to see, like, right in the middle, oh, okay, Sam and John talk about characters. Here they talk about editing. Here they talk about clickbait, whatever it is. And then if you scroll down in the description itself, you'll see thumbnails with those titles on them that are chapters that will draw your audience to specific parts. So yeah, it's definitely something worth doing. There's a bunch of AI bots out there that say they'll do it. I haven't found a single one that does anything remotely readable to a viewer. So it's going to take some time unless you know your video in and out as you go into it. But yeah, it's worth putting the time in for that.
And I guess the place at which the captions, the transcripts, and the timestamps or the chapters come together is that if you search Google for something, it can show you not just a video that answers your question, but sort of the exact segment or the exact moment it is referred to. So that stuff is really powerful. And I know it's often extra steps for the average video person that thinks their video starts and ends in their editing software, but I think it is worthwhile exploring.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the myth is, once I'm done editing and uploaded the video, that's it. But honestly, creating and uploading the video is probably 10% or less of the actual work of getting that video views. And like most of it happens after the fact. And that's where a lot of creators fall.
Absolutely. And we probably need to do an entire show on that. And that show probably is just you telling me what to do, because I'm usually so done and so working on the next video by that point. Like
I'm the same.
I throw things out on social media and hope.
Yeah, I know the advice. Do I follow the advice? Meh.
And again, harking back to that planning thing, Saeed mentions having a structure in the first place is very beneficial if you want to add chapters. And again,
definitely.
Depending on your editing software, like I know in Camtasia, I can actually set those up inside of my video project and send it to YouTube, and it will actually take care of it for me. So that's really, really useful. Okay, so Walter has asked a question, and he writes, do you both use your run of show to help with doing your YouTube channel chapters? I mean, the theoretical answer is this is exactly why we have these segments and this background. In reality, we don't always get back to add them to the YouTube data. It's something we aspire to do, but we don't always get there. Is that fair?
It is our intention.
Sam?
Yeah, yes, that's about right. Yeah. What a slap in the face. No, I'm just kidding. I think we missed a really good or maybe not a really good question, but one I wanted to answer anyway, which is Saeed said, on a side note, I still don't get why reaction videos are often more popular than the actual video they react to. I often will watch the reaction video to a video I would never have watched. And it is almost 100% Chef Reacts, watching something that is utterly horrific and just a train wreck of like someone cooking something that looks so awful. and that's the only way I would watch that video is because he makes it funny.
It's interesting because I'm probably a bit like Saeed. Like I don't even watch reaction videos. I think they're like the lowest form of culture. Like I'm just like, why? Because they're always
Most
young
of them
people.
are.
There are always young people that are like, I found some music from 1973. I thought Taylor Swift created music. What is this? I'm so shocked.
Yeah, I think there's like 3 levels of reaction videos, and one is just like, I'm literally watching this, and maybe I go, oh, ooh, and that's the worst. The second is the very clickbaity, like over the top, formulaic, like Rhett and Link. We sat down a bunch of kids and gave them a potato, and they were like, "What's this? That's what French fries are from." Whatever. And then the last one is just a very sarcastic person mocking something else, and that's what I'm interested in.
Oh dear. Anyway, I think that's probably a discussion for a whole other show. But yes, it is. I don't know. I mean, I'm such a grumpy old man when I come and do these shows, but I'm very much set in my ways, and I kind of know what I like and what I don't like. And I think, honestly, mostly your audience will have similar sensibilities regarding that. So just try things out to see what works for you, and potentially reproduce that. It's funny, you talk about the reaction videos that are literally just reacting. I see so many videos on TikTok that are just somebody else's content, and there's like a green screen person in the corner just looking at the camera. Like, exactly. It's just, Anyway.
Yeah, those are the worst.
They're the worst. They really are. Anyway, speaking of happier topics, Sam, if people want to catch up with you, watch your content, follow you on social media, all other things, where can they go to do that?
Yeah, head over to samproof.tv or scan this QR code. You can find all of my social media links in the top left, and probably some videos of me pointing at other people's videos of cats on TikTok. No, but if you do want cats, head over to cuteavalanche.com, where I believe Amanda has just brought home some new fosters, and you can see them on our 24/7 kitten cam.
Nice. And if you want to catch up with me, there are social media links at the bottom of the page at johnlacey.com, a whole bunch of tutorials and videos and other things, and of course the podcast. You can find that over there at johnlacey.com. But thank you everybody so much for your company today. It's always great to have so much happening in the chat. We do really appreciate it. I know it's sort of Easter long weekend here. Happy Easter to those that celebrate. We will be back next week. I'm not really sure what the subject is going to be yet. We'll have a chat about that after this show. But thank you so much. If you've got questions about video editing more generally, or any aspect of video or content creation, let us know in the chat. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah. Does your daylight savings happen between now and the next show?
Not the next show, but the show after that one. Okay, so keep an eye on the invites, because the times may change, and it's kind of annoying because it just reached the point where I was really comfortable with the time, and now it's going to change again. But I mean, don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you happen to be watching.
we can figure it out. I don't care if we move it an hour one way or the other. All right. Okay. Have a good one, everybody.
Cool. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks so much for your company today, and come back next week. We'll talk about some more things then.